Tony here from Big Ears Audio, and welcome to another edition of Love What You Do, Do What You Love. I'm here with Martyn Thomas.
Hi.
Who is lead on curiosity and innovation. That's the title
You got
you've given
it.
yourself.
That's it.
And, tell me, Martyn. Martyn and I met a few months ago. Martyn does a podcast, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But tell me about what you do. You're, should I say, you're in the marketing, advertising, what's what
yeah.
this
I mean, I've been fortunate enough not to have a proper job for a long time because I'm in advertising, and I mean that in the nicest way, because every day is you never know what's going to happen or what kind of business or brand you're going to come across. So it's a really interesting role. So I've been in the business 35 or so years. I had my own company for 20 years, but in the last 12 months, I was acquired by another company. So I've gone from employer to employee, and that's been fascinating. And in that juxtaposition, my role is curiosity and innovation, because if you can be curious in life, then that's where you discover. I don't know, it drives you to discover new things and to get a wider perspective on life.
Is this something that happened a long time? So you said you've been in the industry for 35 years. So did you always start off in marketing advertising? What's your beginning? What's your humble?
Well, I spent 2 years at Oxford failing my first year, and I thought, bugger this, I'm going to kind of go to London and find my fortune like Dick Whittington.
Yeah.
I fell into some job with Dunlop Sports Company, which seemed exporting tennis balls and tennis rackets on behalf of Dunlop, taking orders, managing all that. I do recall drinking a lot at lunch times and not being very happy. And then a job came up in the Daily Telegraph, and when jobs used to be in newspapers, and it was looking for an advertising assistant.
Okay.
In an advertising agency, and I thought, well, here we go, give it a go. And I was fortunate enough to get the job. And that was at a company called Publicis in London, and I just went into this place and I went, okay, this isn't like a proper job at all.
No. You thought, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Because obviously advertising wasn't on the radar, and you sort of you thought.
Well, most people in fairness don't actually know it exists. When my parents were around, I tried to explain what I do, and I think people still try to explain kind of what the role is in terms of, like, do you make the ads or do you write the ads? The role of media and communications, which is sort of my forte more so, is about helping brands, clients to realise their worth and go to market in the most practical and cost-effective way to get the best return on.
So that's where you got your grounding.
Yeah,
and that's where you got your taste for the industry.
I reckon.
And
And
you sort of was it the classic? You worked your way up the.
A bit like that. I worked my way up and sideways in London a bit, and then I got married in London and had a child in London, and then I thought to myself, well, there's a danger here. I'm turning into my father, which is I've got this father thing, right, where he worked for the same company for 39 years, and would commute 3 hours a day into London, and I go, that's not a life, mate. That's
wow.
I got that right.
Wow.
So I thought, I just don't want to do that, and I was in danger of doing that without even thinking about it, which I think happens to a lot of people. How did I get here? Thank you, David Byrne. And so I thought, right, I'm going to try something, and I'm going to go to Australia. And I'd always been fascinated in Australia from the age of like 9 or 10, looking at books, looking at great white sharks, looking at snakes and spiders and all that stuff. And came over here and managed to land a job in Melbourne. And thankfully it was Melbourne.
I was going to say, where did you? Was it everything that you thought Australia would be? Because most people have this picture from overseas. Most of it's very like Queensland, very snakes, But you come into a city like Melbourne, which is a metropolis, which is just probably a smaller version of where you were, and it probably was what vibe. Did that excite you when you sort of came in? You thought, oh, look where I am? Or
pretty much one of the first things I did was to buy a 4-wheel drive. Was a Toyota Land Cruiser Desert Jeweler, which, Desert Jewelers, they're big fat tires, just to go shopping or whatever. It was crazy. And we've lived pretty much in the same house since we landed for 25 years. So
awesome.
Near Gardenvale, near the seaside.
So you need
near the seaside.
Yeah, beautiful.
So I think expectations on Australia were pretty wide open. I'd been to Sydney previously and had a bit of a look around.
Yeah.
And done a lot of walking and got very sweaty because it's very humid. And I thought, I'm not really digging this. And as I say, fortunately, Melbourne came up and they put me up in a service department for the first 2 or 3 weeks in St Kilda Road, which if you know St Kilda Road back in the 90s at the weekend,
Yeah,
it's not a thriving metropolis at all. It's dead.
No.
There's no shops. There's nothing. And I'm going.
And there was a red light district back then too, wasn't there?
It could have been.
Part of it was.
Yeah. And it's like, well, where is everybody? Where is everything? What am I doing here?
Yeah.
But quickly became to realise that there's some awesome people in Melbourne, pockets of people who you meet, and people come up to you and say, "I hear you've just landed. You just come off the boat." I wonder which boat they were talking about. I understand it now, obviously, but and they were so grateful and so accommodating, and it took a lot of time to introduce myself and our family and my family
awesome.
to people. You know, it's like Melbourne's very good in that respect, and no regrets whatsoever.
Oh, beautiful! And then you started a business here, or did you work for somebody? Did you come over having a job, or you just
Yeah, no,
was it a more So you sorted that all out over there.
I sorted all of that over there.
Cool.
I came to Sydney first for some interviews, and I spent 2 weeks in Sydney. Flew over on Air India, had 3 stops in India. Arrived in Sydney, had nowhere to stay. Did all that. Slept on floors, and got through it as you do. And then went back to London. Had no job offer, and I thought this isn't working well. And then at the last minute, I got a job offer for at J. Walter Thompson, which no longer exists, which is a great shame. It's been morphed with another company.
Is it?
It's called Thompson Wonderman or something.
Oh, really?
It's like getting rid of Old Gourmet Mather or Saatchi.
I know.
It's a talking about branding.
Yeah.
And,
See, this is what I don't understand.
a couple of shoes.
Yeah, what I don't understand. This is what I don't understand about some companies. You spend all these years building all this equity in a brand, and then
Yeah, you just piss it off.
But I don't understand that. I don't understand. I understand about reinvention. I understand, but I don't understand the logic, because it happens to a lot of companies
Yes.
that have spent years building equity, trust, and that's what when we talk advertising, that's what we talk about. That's what we strive for.
That's it. Long-term thinking.
We strive
branding.
for that, and then they merge with another company and they decide, well, forget it, and then people go, all right, well, I'm sure they've got their reasons, but it's just I don't understand it. That's my
I don't think many of us understand it, but rationalisation was probably the rationale in this case, as the multinational networks, for various reasons, are starting to close in on themselves a bit as they're finding it harder to make a dollar.
Sure.
With the old functions.
The old model, yeah.
So I stayed at J. Walter Thompson, probably not long enough to do the right thing by them, in fairness, for a couple of years, and then I was offered a job at the Campaign Palace, which back in the day was that was 92, 93, which caught the end of the halcyon days, I'll say.
Of the 80s?
Of the 80s, that's right.
I hear about the halcyon days of the 80s.
And Palace was great. That was 5 years. And then I just dibbled and dabbled for a bit and became managing director of somewhere else, which I didn't enjoy. And then I realised I'd become unemployable.
Cool.
And that was it.
And this is when you decided, you know what? You're not unemployed. Nobody else employ you, but you have all this knowledge. And is that when you decided?
Yeah.
I'm going to set up my own space.
I had to set my own thing up, and because I had to, I suppose, follow this desire to do better than what I thought was out there in terms of what the market provided. And so I started a company called Frank Media.
Great.
Frank by name, Frank by nature. I got called Frank a lot, and the people that were with me at Frank are solid gold and stayed with me in 2 or 3 cases for 12, 13 years, right through the company.
Awesome.
So it was that was really gratifying. Yeah.
That's awesome. So that tells me you had a great culture.
Yeah. I was listening to a show this morning about culture, and everyone talks about culture and this and culture that, and you can't force culture. Culture is a natural thing, and the stepping stones to a good culture are to ensure that obviously everyone's happy. You have to listen to everyone. It's about listening, not talking, and it's about having no narky bullshit going on in the office at all. Zero.
But all that, I'm a big believer, and I think you do too. That all comes from the top too. So,
I guess.
You know what I mean? It does. It's that pyramid. Like if you're instigating, if things are happening at the top management level, it tends to filter through to bottom.
Yes.
And that's when you start to get all that. But if if you lead by example and you lead by and you have that thing,
Yeah.
and you nurture, you have empathy, this and that bleeds into the business, and that's all part of it. And that's proof's in the pudding. If they've been there for 13 years, there's obviously something working, something good. So
Yeah, they couldn't get a job anywhere else.
And then what, you sold that, or did you?
Well, I was fortunate enough. I kind of let the company go from where it was in 2000, and we had some great clients to start with. We were the .com agency. We had seek.com.au, we had carsales.com.au, we had whatif.com. So we had the set apart from real estate. And the company went really, really well. And I missed out on a couple of occasions to flog it. We had the Great Depression in 2008.
2008.
How could I forget? Thank you.
GFC.
GFC. GFC was awesome.
Thanks.
And then it came to kind of 180 degrees, and an awesome guy called Jack Byrne, who I met from Hatched Media, put his hand up and say, I don't know, I like the cut of your jib, and I want to take everything you've got there and stick it into my company. And that was about a year and a half ago. And I don't. Collectively, we haven't looked back. It's been a wonderful experience, and it's just a great time.
That's awesome, and that brings me now to what you're doing now with Hatch. Now, you're developing. Martyn's developing a great podcast series called The Hatch.
The Hatch. That's right. Lifting the hatch on.
Tell us a little bit more about it, because I really it's a really good series. So
Thank you. Well, the ethos for Hatched Media is that the industry deserves better. And that comes from my understanding of the industry, but also Jack's understanding, coming from radio and servicing all the media agencies and going, there has to be better for clients. There has to be better solutions. So it's about doing better, or industry deserving better outcomes, better equality, better ideas, just better. And so the whole idea of the podcast is to lift the hatch on talking to people who are affecting positive change in the industry.
So I was going to say, it's not just an industry-based podcast. You are talking to people from all different specialities that have, like you said, a positive influence, or they're talking about life. They're talking about certain things that anybody could tap into. And
the podcast has given me a new lease on life in terms of meeting new people, discovering new things, but also, if you look at life in total, I like to look at life in 3/3, like Canadian ice hockey, and maybe American ice hockey, I don't know. But it's the first 30 years, you get through, you establish yourself, you meet someone, and maybe you start having a family. And that's kind of what I did, that's probably a lot of people did. Then 30 to 60, you raise that family and make sure everything's like hunky-dory. And then 60 to 90, which is where most of us are going to be going, then you start to fire up and kind of not find your purpose, but start to realise your purpose. It may be unconscious, it may not be, but I've met quite a few people who are like 60, 65, who've saying, I'm about to retire. And I'm going, what does that mean? And they said, it means I got more chance to read or travel. And I'm going, I think I'd be very bored doing that. It wouldn't get me out of bed on a day-to-day basis. So that's one of the things. So this period I'm in now is the beginning of my final third. And
good.
That's really exciting, because I've got so much energy that I want to, things I want to achieve.
Yes, and that's a great place to be. Also, because we're here going into that final phase. You've got all this knowledge and all this stuff that you've accumulated, and you can actually, and you know what too, you've done part 1, part 2. Part 3 is yours. So now
that's right.
you do with what you like. It'd be sad just to squander it away. Just make some stuff happen. What you're doing, but it sounds like to me it's going to be an exciting time, and I can't wait to see more of or hear more of what you're doing.
Very good.
But I really appreciate you coming in, Martyn.
Thanks
Thank you so much.